Recording is now in progress, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I would say we are live, but we're not live. Okay, so we're gonna open up. And this is going to be which segment? You don't know, do you?
Wednesday, right?
Well, I thought so, but we had a topic to talk about before Wednesday, which is a question I have for you about whether or not should we focus on chemistry first, or should we, and I was gonna give you like a breakdown. I don't know if I did that already.
No.
Once we start talking about, so let me just ask you on that, and then we can go from there. Um, okay, so welcome to Sharlann and Jo'Swe.
Welcome.
That was Sharlann. I'm
Yeah.
Jo'Swe. Jo'Swe. Okay, Sharlann. So listen. So, man, when was our last one? Did we
It's
skip a
been a bit
beat?
now.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yes,
We'll catch up.
we have to. We have to. How you feeling today?
Feeling great.
Okay, so Sharlann is appearing remote because we're not in the same place today. So this is going to be probably a regular thing from time to time. Probably half of our stuff is going to be on Zoom. We're going to be together in person whenever we can, and that's the idea of things. But for right now, this will most certainly do.
Right.
Hi to all you in the audience. I wanted to kick something off. Something came to my attention, and I was trying to find something to write with because I know you're going to say a lot, and I want to keep track. So I came across some information that really made me think. Right. So Sharlann, so what I'm looking at is we always focus on chemistry, right? So I've
Right.
talked to you about that first date or that meet and greet to see if there, is some kind of chemistry. And then during the meet and greet, if you want to like let it roll into a first date, you can. But the meet and greet could be 15 minutes, it can be 2 hours. But it's just for you guys to kind of get acquainted to kind of figure out, especially a meet and greet, because that means that you would have not have met yet, meaning you met virtually, probably online, and then now you kind of want to just see who's this personality behind the online profile, right? So having said all that, we focus a lot on the chemistry.
Yes.
So I was proposing that there's a couple things that probably should come before the chemistry, and that would probably help us out a lot. So what I was thinking was, all right, so after talking to this person for, let's say a week or two online, over the phone, and things of that nature. So one of the questions I'm going to ask myself, is this person going to the same place as I am going? Do they have the same destination? In other words, is our goal and trajectory pretty much the same? Right. So we want to make it to a certain place. Let's just say San Francisco, right? It doesn't matter. Your method of getting there could vary from my method of getting there, but the end goal, the objective, or the destination is the same, right? We're heading in the same direction.
Right.
So secondly, the other thing would be, is this person available? Can they be available for me? Right. So that's a big question because one, it could be physically, right? So if I travel every other week, then you know that I'm only going to be around every other week.
Right.
But what about emotional availability? That's a question.
That's really important.
And that's something you have to pick up while you are conversing over the phone, chatting online, and all this other stuff. And even when you meet, that's fine. This requirements gathering, the gathering of this data can continue through the meet and greet and first date, right? But you have to ascertain these things because you don't want it to get too far. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sharlann, but a lot of women make the mistake of quickly getting emotionally caught up and basically ignoring all the red flags.
Well, I hate to say,
I'm not saying it can't go both ways.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You just want me to speak for all women.
No, but just that emotional factor, the fact that women are made up of more emotions than men are, And a lot of times when a man comes in, let's say he already has a swag. We all know about women who are attracted to a certain man. But let's just say someone who's attracted to thugs, right? And I hate to use that word, but just your typical thug type person, jeans, Timberland boots, whatever, has a certain swag. They walk
Certain
into the room,
style.
it already catches their eye. He says a certain thing, and to you and I, it could be mumbo jumbo because he's probably speaking some sort of offshoot of English, right? And then she's like, "Ooh!" And now it struck an emotional chord with her to the point that if the night goes on, she may ignore a lot of red flags that were demonstrated during
Well,
that time.
you said something earlier about chemistry and that it shouldn't come first,
Mm-hmm.
but it does,
Mm-hmm.
because when you meet someone,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you do feel the chemistry. So the
Mm-hmm.
trick is to balance the chemistry or emotions that someone may bring out in you that you just met with the rationale that allows you to say, wait a minute, this is a red flag. This is a red flag. Am I even going to be safe
Okay.
if I'm with
So
this
so so
person?
so feel this chemistry, but then set it aside so we can still do our requirements gathering. Gather this data.
Right.
Which one
Right.
is,
We still
hey,
have to be like a private detective.
we're headed to the same place, so that's good. Are we available? If the man talks a lot about his ex-wife or this, that, and the other, obviously he may not be emotionally available right now, right?
Correct.
If there are other things going on in his life that you detect based on the information that's given and or presented, then you have to act on that and say, hey, this person is not available right now. I've met women that, and even in terms of just, I want to say casually, but I guess socially, I've met women that talked about their children's father or this or their mother or their dad, and then start crying about like what happened to her as a kid with the dad or the stepdad or something like that. They walked out or whatever it was, and you can tell they're caught up in that. So I'm thinking to myself then, okay, so how available this person, in terms of emotional, mentally, spiritually, and then physically is the first one we go to. But think of it like we were saying, hey, this person has a hang up with a family member, like a mother or a
Mhm.
father, and the relationship is really bad, right? That's one of the things that you really have to like stand back and take a look at, because again, how available are they? Or is this relationship going to take on characteristics of that bad relationship? Because this is going to be a close relationship, and the other familial relationship is supposed to be close as well. And sometimes we exhibit certain signs. Sometimes we tell the wrong person off, right? We're upset
Right.
because of this here, but this person is here, and for some reason we're in a mood and we let them have it, right? But
Right.
overall, if you can't resolve that dysfunction
Mhm.
um between your mother or your father primarily, right? It could be brother and sister as well. And if it's more than one of those, man, when I tell you, you better pack your bags and run, pack your bag, man, don't even unpack, leave them out in the car and just run. Okay. But yeah,
So,
it's going to bleed on to you, and that person would not be available for a fruitful relationship.
so you're speaking to something that I've been hearing more and more from different relationship. I hate to call them experts or gurus, but people that a large number of people listen to for relationship advice,
Mhm.
is to deal with the trauma you have so that you're not bringing it into your relationship.
Yes.
Now, I don't believe that it's always necessary to deal with all of your trauma before you get into a relationship,
I
because
don't think
that
that's
may not be
possible.
feasible.
I don't
Right.
think it's possible.
But you have to be working on
Mhm.
trauma or major issues.
Mhm.
Like if I, for example, I have ADD. I'm 48, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 46.
Okay.
So I went through life trying to cope with that, really
Mhm.
without the proper tools. It made things more difficult for me.
Mhm.
But the difference is when you're coming to a relationship, You're bringing what you have to the table. Now, that other person is expecting that you're relatively healthy, emotionally available, enough to carry on a productive relationship. If that's not true, I feel like it's important that you're able to be honest with yourself. Do I need some help before I can even get into a relationship?
Mhm.
And that's really, no one can truly answer that for you unless you're going to a professional. But when you're seeking a relationship with someone, it's not their job to be your therapist because that won't work.
So
So
we
that's
are
what I think
saying,
it's about.
no, that's good. So, and fair. So what we're saying is that there's certain core issues you're going to have to work on yourself and get professional help for, right, before you can actually get into a relationship, because technically in one way or another you will be unavailable for that relationship, right? But at the same time, you don't have to fix your every flaw before you get into a relationship. As a matter of fact, I've seen a lot of cases where you have a partnership. Let's just say two people do get together, become a couple, and it's through that loving relationship that there are other smaller issues that begin to be resolved, because the person is seeing certain things, and the relationship has room to nurture the growth of the other person, or both.
Right. And I think one way to look at it, and it's not always easy to be honest with ourselves
Mm-hmm.
about where we are, but self-reflection is really important because once someone outside of you has to say that your behavior or maybe something that happened to you in the past is
Mm-hmm.
interfering with you being a friend, an employee, a brother or sister, not to mention
Or
a
kind
partner or
to
a
yourself.
spouse.
Kind
Right.
to yourself.
Like your self-talk is cruel or you're self-deprecating
Mm-hmm.
when you're speaking to people and someone tries to give you a compliment and you're always discounting it.
Mm-hmm.
If these things that you're challenging, if you find them to hinder you throughout your life in multiple areas, I think that's a good check, like self-check of, wow, I really need help because this is giving me a problem dealing with people at work. When I'm at home, it's a problem. When I go to family gatherings, if you find that there's a challenge everywhere you go, it can't be that the whole world is off kilter
Mm-hmm.
in relation to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the common denominator is you, that you want to look within. I've
Mm-hmm.
had to do the same.
Okay, that's fair. So when we move away from availability, then comes in chemistry, right? But there
Mhm.
was one that I was thinking that I wanted to add, and that was comfort, because comfort is something that we're looking for in general, right?
Mhm.
But especially in a relationship, a long-term relationship or a marriage, because you guys are in it together. So I'm
Right.
looking at you every day, you're looking at me every day. So if I can't come home to peace and comfort, then I'm probably going to seek it elsewhere, right? And I don't mean by an extramarital affair, but we've met people that didn't like going home, right?
Right.
So that's important too. um I think the other thing that's important along those lines is, we're kind of here to serve. So I'm here to serve whoever my wife will be, right? She's here to serve me. And in that, I think that will come that selfless love. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Where it's
Yes.
not about me. I'm focusing more on you. As I focus on you, now all of a sudden, it's never self centered. Right?
Right.
Why? Because I'm always looking to serve, to give, right? Not to receive. But at the same time, even though my desires to receive any specific thing, it's already given, because um your outlook is to do the same. Hey, how can I serve my husband? How can I make him happy? How can I do this, that, and the other, without losing yourself? I'm not saying, hey, become
Mhm.
someone else and become a people pleaser, because that doesn't work. But just say,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? Um, I'm married now, and I thank God. I appreciate I thank the universe that I am married and I have someone who is for me, who got my back, right? So if
Mhm.
this person got my back, I'm going to do everything to make their life easier, right? Focus on them. The problem is that gets complicated, but without going into the complications, right? Because
Mhm.
it only gets complicated because we complicated it, right? So, but I think that that factor should be there. We should go in more with a more like a serving. I don't want to say a servant attitude, but more of a serving attitude, or ready to give.
Mhm. One thing that's required for that to work is for you to present your authentic self when you're meeting people in the dating arena.
Mm-hmm,
So if you have observed someone, maybe you see the chemistry and you feel like this is the person for me, and
mm-hmm,
then you start shaping yourself into the person you believe they want or the
mm-hmm,
person is their soulmate, then eventually you won't be able to maintain that behavior because it's not you, it's not your authentic self. So if we present ourselves to be the people we are, you have a better chance of a relationship surviving because once everybody, when you get comfortable, guess what you become more of?
mm-hmm,
Yourself,
mm-hmm,
whoever you are. So if you've created this thing where you've modeled yourself after a popular actress, singer, actor, uh, a famous person that people look up to
mm-hmm.
because you feel like this is what men want or this is what women want,
Okay.
and then they're like, oh, this is great. They're taking you at face value.
Mm-hmm.
You are taking each other at face value, but
Yeah, but
then
that's the wrong
it's
thing to do, right?
well, yeah, it's, you have to be yourself because nobody can keep up a facade forever. Not
Yep.
even, there are people with mental issues, mental disorders that will allow them to become
I thought you were going to say
somebody
mental
else.
dysmorphia. Okay. Go ahead. I'm
No,
listening.
but I mean, they can pretend to be someone else and do so well, but that is
Yeah,
not
but
something that you can.
in the long run, even though things will cave in, but it
Mhm.
hurts them though.
Yes, it does.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, it will disrupt the relationship, but it does end up hurting um you or the person that's doing that for the most part because one, let's suppose you're in this relationship for a year or two, you
Mhm.
never got to be yourself.
Right. And
So
that's a long time to not be yourself. It's not a tremendously long time to be in a relationship or a good relationship, at least that's
yeah,
healthy.
yep.
But yeah, but it's a
So
long time to wear a mask.
can you imagine can you imagine being in a relationship cooped up, um and I mean my cooped up mentally and emotionally
Right.
because you're trying to be someone else.
Hmm.
That's tough.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it. And sometimes I probably am too much myself in the sense of maybe talk a little less. It's been rumored that I talk a lot,
That's what they had
and
said.
that is what they said.
Hmm.
But you don't have to say everything that comes across your mind.
Hmm.
And it's fun to have great conversations, but sometimes it's good to be quiet. Like,
Hmm.
can you sit in one place and be quiet with yourself, just quietly contemplating?
Hmm.
Because if you can't, that points to some issues too. Because some of us can't enjoy spending time with ourselves. So I'm not sure how a person like that is going to enjoy time with someone else in a relationship where they're talking about aiming to marriage and spend the rest of their lives with someone, and they have things with themselves that just make them feel not quite right. That's why it's so
Yes.
important to address those things.
I agree. And I will say that when things come apart and you're not being yourself, you're not being true to yourself. And if you're going to be true to anybody first, it should be yourself. One. Two, um, I I used to joke and say, "Hey, I want my first date with a person to be um at a chicken wing joint." Oh, I live in Houston, so crawfish or something, something. I don't eat crawfish, but the so because you got to work with your fingers, right? It's like finger food, and you got to get your fingers dirty. So you have to be more. You can't sit here and and eat wings, very sophisticated. It's that's not how it works, and you're gonna have stuff drooling down your
You'd be
chin.
surprised. Some people.
So what I'm trying to say though is that I want to see more of who you are, and I want you to be comfortable with being you around me, right? So I have not said that in the past, and I think people looked at me and they felt like, okay, he's on a higher level, so I need to behave this way. The problem is that I've seen it in disaster, right? Because when the person says, "Hey, I'm just gonna decide to be me," the problem is, 3 years have gone by. Now you want to be you, and then it's crazy. You can be you and then see how quickly things fall apart,
Mhm.
right? So I've had neighbors that were like that, and people that I knew, and they struggled. They struggled in relationships, truly, and it's a shame, right? The most important though thing, Sharlann, with anything is to learn from all of
Yes.
your mistakes, any mishaps that you have had, right? So you're either going to be winning or you're going to be learning. Don't look at failure as, hey, I messed up. And sometimes we do mess up. Sometimes that we make like mistakes, big and small, all in between, right? But we need to learn from them. Sean, I think we
Absolutely.
have a big issue. I think we miss, especially with modern dating, we miss a lot of things. And I'm not saying
And
we have to switch up to traditional because you said something. You said, hey, remember the Madonna song?
which
we,
one?
we are living in a material world,
Oh yeah,
so
material.
I am a material girl,
Material.
right? Okay.
Right.
So we're living in a modern world. Then I'll have to say that I'm a modern boy. I'm not gonna say girl, but yeah, right. So but dating has become modern. The problem is I'm not trying to regress. I don't want you to think that.
Mhm.
I need you to understand that when I talk about modern versus traditional, we can do modern dating, but I think we need to hold on dearly, clinch them even, eternal principles. So, whatever eternal principles that fueled the traditional dating should also fuel the modern dating. Why is that? Because it won't allow us to build the construct so differently that it's never going to work. You
Mhm.
build a building, it has to have a foundation. No building at all, ever, period. Wherever you are, is going to be erected without a foundation, right? When you build out certain support factors of any structure, they have to follow certain principles. The science of it just does not change, right? So that's what I really mean. Let's let's make sure that we are observing all the principles that hold dating, traditional or modern or anything else, right, together.
Yeah, I'd like to actually make a parallel in business. When you have business relationships, if you don't have a mutually beneficial arrangement,
Mm-hmm.
eventually that business relationship is going to fall apart because if
Mm-hmm.
one person is taking advantage or benefiting significantly more than the other,
Mm-hmm.
eventually that relationship will fall apart.
It's
The
imbalanced,
same
yeah.
goes for friendships and romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So all we have to do, or I shouldn't say all we have to do, but if we start to look at the same success principles that people pay to go to seminars to hear speakers, these major speakers speak and share success principles, but those can apply to other parts of your life. Because what are we really afraid of? Are we afraid that who I am as a person, as an authentic person, is really not good enough for anyone to ever love or be with? Like, what is the
I
whole
hope not.
charade about? Because that's sometimes if we sit down and we're worried about a scenario, we're like, oh, I just can't handle this. And if someone were to ask us, what's the worst thing that can happen? And we answer it, and it may be something bad, but it's not often not the end of the world. And if we could face that this is the worst thing that could happen. So wouldn't it be better instead of you wasting all this time and energy worrying, thinking, go take an action. Either do the thing or decide that this thing is not for you and go in a different direction. But a lot of times we're stagnant, we're not making progress, and we're like, what's happening? People are worried about getting older. Some people want to start a family. But rushing into a relationship to start a family is not going to work well because Jose, I'm not hearing your audio for some reason.
Yeah, because you unplugged me. Okay. Now,
I
so
did.
let's look
Is
at
it
it from a different
magic?
perspective. Okay. I'm sorry. So I sort of just you made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Wait, so what did you just finish saying? I'm gonna get it back.
So that this having a facade and you're worried
Mhm,
about getting older
mhm.
and you want to start a family before you're a certain
Yes.
age. I've
Okay.
heard
Yep.
men and women say the
Yep.
same thing.
Mhm,
But then you're going to pretend to be someone so you can
mhm.
get with a person and start this family. But then what is the family going to consist of?
That
Because you
doesn't
weren't
work.
ever your true self.
Mhm.
So it's all gonna fall apart.
All right, so let's just suppose you didn't start a family at an earlier age because you were busy building your career. You were getting your education and then you built your career and so on and so forth. You experienced certain things. And now all of a
Mhm.
sudden, like you say, the clock is ticking. What am I going to do? Clock is ticking. Biological clock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Right. Okay. So now you want to rush into this thing. So you spent years building your career. You spent at least 5 years building your career. Right. um, you have learned a few things, you've grown, you probably visited other places, you start to figure out what you really want in life, all those things that did not come to you when you turned 18 years old. It did not come to you when you first started dating. It didn't come to you when you first became sexually active. It came to you, it was a process of maturing on all fronts. Okay. And you working a plan. You're so busy working your plan, you made adjustments because sometimes plans don't go accordingly, right? And you adjust a bit. And then in that adjustment, you continue moving forward. So that's exactly what building a family takes. The problem is you have to meet someone in order to start a family, right? So the meeting of the person
Well,
is crucial. No, I understand, right? What the lady say? Hey, I prayed to God for a man and he gave me a son. That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't even want to, yeah, I don't want to unpack that one at all. But I will say to you that um, the crucial part there, though, is biological clock is ticking, meeting the person. So that's what we're talking about here. So look, listen to this, the new approach, right? We just talked about destination, availability, and then chemistry, right? Then we'll talk about comfort and peace of mind and so on and so forth, right? You can't be the kind of wife or the husband that drives into up to the house, into the driveway, and you sit in the car and you're trying to prepare yourself to go into the house.
mhm.
There's something wrong with that scenario, Sharlann. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying that you haven't done it. I'm not saying that I haven't done it.
right.
It's not good. It's
And then
not good to want to
also,
be away from home because I get no peace at home.
right.
But
And
but
then
but if
the
you
other
follow this
thing,
formula, I'm sorry, if you follow
oh
this
yeah, go ahead.
formula, it gives you the opportunity to have a better batting average, right? When trying to knock this relationship out of the park, right? To have a more successful relationship. We have to pay attention to every single one of these markers, and then any red flags need to be addressed or it cancels the person out.
Right. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that relationships are not like instant soup or making a pack of, quick ramen. It takes work. So the concept or the belief that you'll find this person who is your soulmate and you guys will just automatically be able to have a successful relationship, that is not, leaving out a lot of details. A successful relationship takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work from both parties.
Okay.
One person cannot make or drive or only be the only person nurturing a relationship. It takes two.
Takes two to
So I
tango.
think that's,
Surely
yeah,
does.
it's important to point that out because we spend all this time, people who are dating looking for that person.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the person.
Mm-hmm.
When you're two people are together, everybody is their own person, has their own principles, wants, likes, dislikes. There
Mm-hmm.
has to be compromise. There's a lot of things that go into building a successful relationship and a marriage.
So wait.
And
So you have to do what with the relationship?
you have to put in the work. You have to nurture it.
You use the word build.
Build, yes,
So,
build.
ladies and gentlemen, so Sharlann and I concur. We are in agreement, right? We attest and we affirm that you have to build a good relationship. It will not come. Do you understand? Other things come. The relationship won't. Trust me. Okay. And that's what we need to focus on, building the relationship. So then what does it take to build a good relationship? Well, let's start with meeting someone that is somehow compatible, right? So I'm the certain type of way that, unfortunately, Sharlann, if I meet someone who is, God forbid, but they are a shelf stocker at Walmart, right? This
Okay.
person could be very interesting. We could have certain things in common, right? And we could have some sort of chemistry. Yes, would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. The problem is that if my thought processes and my experience have taken me to a much higher level than that, or let's just switch it. I'm the stalker at the shelf at Walmart, and then you're the person that you kind of like planned out your career and you soared, and not just soared, but you excelled through the ladder of success rapidly, right? In accelerated fashion. You went from a generalist to director in 7 years, let's just say, right?
Mhm.
So then we meet, and then not only is your salary significantly higher, but just mentally, I don't know how to put together a plan like you did, that you carefully, precisely executed to get you to where you are. So that
Mhm.
tells me that your brain works differently. You might be a thinker, I might be a doer, or you might be much more of a thinker than I am. Does that make sense? So then where's the
Mhm.
true compatibility? Because in 10 years, where do we see ourselves? Now, if I'm working at Walmart at a certain age, right? And I'm stocking shelves. And then you are a director of something, director of HR, right? So then
Mhm.
now in 10 years, where will you be? You could probably be corporate HR director, right? Or move on to
Mhm.
some other sort of executive leadership or what have you. And then where am I going to be? Or are you going to have to encourage me and try to fix me? Because that doesn't work either.
No.
You can't fix
So
me.
you said a key word, which is compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's a scenario where those two people can be compatible.
Mm-hmm.
However, if if one person in the relationship is significantly either more highly educated or has a brain that works like where they're creating
Overtime.
things,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Their brain is always busy, busy, busy. That type of person knows if they want a peer who is similar, or if maybe a thinker does want a doer
Mhm.
because they can balance each other out. So it's very
But what
tricky.
about the trajectory? What about where we're going? Right?
Right,
Because that's the first you have to look. Do we have the same objectives? Are we headed to the same place? I just
right.
want to throw that
So
in the mix of your
right. So the
analogy.
difference in earning power, yes, it can speak to that. But
It's not
there
the so
are
forget the money, but the
okay.
workings
Well,
of the
when you say the
dynamics.
So when you say the trajectory, so where, you're not talking about finances, so
Where do you want to be in life, right? So
okay.
some people are live a certain way. You know, for instance, you and I have looked at homes and we've looked at apartments, right? And
Mhm.
they're pretty much all luxury, right?
Right.
So you notice we didn't go to Third Ward and look at some of the $350 apartments, right? A
Well,
month.
you don't know about Third Ward. It's something else now.
Oh,
I used to live
I
there back in the day.
I
Is
get it, but
it Midtown?
I can show you some places though that would yeah. You say, hey, don't even pull up here. Let's just keep on. I remember I was with someone and we were driving around looking at some real estate, and there was an area that was kind of gated, but you had to go, it's like you turn into a street and it kind of becomes just like, I don't know, they had like bungalows and maybe like 25 on one side, 25 on the other.
Mhm,
And it almost like they had their own little city there. And it looked a little bit like the Carter, right? The
mhm,
Carter, in terms of the people hanging out, looking sketchy. The Carter from like Nino Brown, you know, where
mhm,
he took over the building. All right.
yeah,
So I started to turn in there and I just turned back around. Right. But what I'm saying though is, why is it that you search, you know, the recent townhome that you moved into? Why Kimberly, you know, your sister, where she lives, right? So
mhm.
why do we all pick that versus something that we would have picked 20, 25 years ago? And the only conclusion I can come to is because our standards kind of, you know, came up some, right? So now our standard is
Right.
XYZ. It's not where it used to be. Versus some folks, you know, probably, you know, let's say younger folks like I was gonna say like my daughter, but she drives a Mercedes Benz, so that's not
Not a good
but
example.
let's just say like, you know, my son or something like
So
that, right? That they will go into something and it doesn't have to be quite like that. But once you start getting to where you can not only acquire a certain taste, but now you can afford it, right? So the standard changes. So that thinking that's behind that. Whereas someone say, hey, they're still living here and this kind of place, and they think that way. And then their environment, they're more consumed about their environment instead of
so
living in the
that's that
living.
you said it, living there and still thinking that way.
But a
So
lot of
just
people are
because
still
someone lives
entrapped
that way,
mentally,
right, but
right? Versus,
not all of them. So
so
that's
you can
one of the
live,
things you have to assess
okay,
too,
so you
right?
can live. Yes, but you can live in your environment, or you can be in an environment, but your brain is always you're working your way out of there. The
Right.
problem is, Sharlann, you're asking me to assess too much. Realistically,
Mhm.
I'm assessing too much at this point, right?
Well, but aren't you assessing too much anyway?
Well, let's put it this way.
I mean,
So it doesn't mean that this would work out, right? But if I were a
mhm,
lawyer and I married a lawyer,
right,
if I were a doctor and I married a doctor, if I am a lawyer but I met someone in law school, I can marry the person that, you know, went to law school with me. Whether they actually, well, they'll all be lawyers. Whether they're practicing attorneys is a different story. But anyway,
right,
because you got some that become political scientists and they teach, right, at
right.
universities. But the whole point is that the trajectory, if that you can ascertain the trajectory, the whatever the final destination or where they're headed a little bit better that way versus having to peel back the layers of the onion in other cases. So again, I'm not saying, hey, meet someone at your job, at your you know, university or what have you, but just in terms of compatibility, you know, this person has the same type of thinking methodology, right? That you have, in terms of just that they are thinkers at the
Mhm.
level that you think. I'm not saying that you guys would agree on everything, because that's not possible. I mean,
Right,
people could be, you guys can be compatible in a lot of ways, and couples are always going to argue and fight. That's, you can't avoid that.
right.
You're
So
two
I have
different
a
people.
scenario for you.
Okay.
The scenario where a young couple starts out and one decides to keep the home front a little more so the other can pursue higher
Mhm.
education to have a
Sure.
successful career.
Sure.
So in that situation, there may be the disparity, but then the one party facilitated the other party getting to
Mhm.
where they are.
Mhm.
Now,
And I've seen that
is that
happen.
still the same?
So I've seen that happen. I worked
Right.
with someone that literally helped put her mate through med school, and then he graduated, started doing his thing, and left her.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is the thing. So let's go back to eternal or to principles, right? And even internal principles. When's the best time to get your education? And what I mean, higher learning, obviously not K through 12. That's a given.
The earlier, the better.
Okay, it is. Is it
Yes.
ideal for everybody? No, because sometimes we get
No.
in our own way, right? Okay, so I'm an
Or have
example.
other goals. I don't
Uh,
want to go to college to be a plumber. That
okay,
doesn't make sense to
so
me.
I went to college 2 years after graduating high school,
Okay.
right? So there's some things I did in between, but I will tell you this that it's better to get it done prior to getting into a long-term relationship or marriage. Now that
Yes.
it's going to happen where you want to get or change careers or this, that, and the other, so on and so forth. But you have to be so.
Or
I'm a
maybe you don't have
logical
the
person.
finances to pursue it right away.
So and
Yeah.
I get that, and I get that. But let me tell you something. So I must have been 23, 20, no, about 24 or so.
Mhm.
Maybe about 24. So maybe 24, maybe hitting 25 when I realized that there were people who were actually changing careers. My first IT job, I was
Mhm.
taking on resumes from headhunters. And
Okay.
these headhunters, what they had was they had some candidates that did not have any background in what we were hiring for. However, they were
Mhm.
professionals. They were looking to change careers.
I see.
But
Yeah.
you have to be careful with that because you could have worked your way up the ladder in one area and then had to
Mhm.
start at 39 in a different one, right?
Right.
And then if you don't have, well, I won't get into that, but yeah, so
Mhm.
you're starting at entry level. I don't know how good of an idea that is unless in the next few years you can take what you got and like, triple your income from what you were already doing. So I know that that happens, and I know
Mhm.
that people are a lot of times successful. Sharlann, this is another point, but I'm not a fan of people that say, "Hey, you know what? I need to change my life. I need to go back to school." Because what they're really saying is, I haven't been successful up to this point with what I know, right? So I need to
Mhm.
go back to school. I don't know what I'm going to go back to school for, but I'm thinking that if I go back to school, I'll learn something that I can apply to a
Mhm.
new job that will make me more money. And this is true. The problem is I've seen that there are a lot of certifications that one can do outside of any sort of matriculation, right? In terms
Mhm.
where you're going to a school that's going to give you some sort of certificate or paper that says you're qualified in something, right? So
Right.
me myself, I've taken um
Damn.
uh yeah, you left the screen. I must have been too ugly for you. So I have gotten certifications that allow me to kind of move up, right, via Microsoft. I haven't delved into other things, but I didn't that you know Amazon Web Services, not really my track. Google is not, there's not enough out there for me to become certified in Google to be, um, at the top of anybody's list where I'm making really, really, really good money. So, but there are things like that, certifications that one can take to kind of like, move up and accomplish those things. But at the same time, I think what we need to set out to do is to positions ourselves to be in the most ideal of situations versus something that's not ideal. And I think we lost Sharlann, but that is okay. I was building my point on that. She's asking, what about folks that change their careers later or later in life, go to school where the spouse or their partner is supporting what they're doing. So we're just going to wait for Sharlann to come back so we don't have to be here talking to ourselves. Okay, so let me get this straight. Guys, Sharlann has just called back. Let me get this straight, Sharlann. So I take the time to set up all this equipment, lighting and everything. You take the time to do your makeup and do all the stuff, mentally prepare, set yourself up. And There's no charger or there's all that to just let the phone die while we're shooting?
With the sun in my face, I couldn't really see the the battery percentage on the phone, to be honest with you. So yes, I get a demerit.
It's not good. Now we have to end the show.